Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back to my channel and support me and love on me. I appreciate every single one of you so very much. Today we are back for the next installment in my Palette Roulette series, and for those of you who don't know what this series is all about, I will go ahead and link the first video of this series in this video somewhere so that you guys can go back and watch the first video where it explains everything. But long answer short, it is a series where I let an app choose the palette that I use for the week, and then I come back to you and I explain my findings to you. My dog just scared the poop out of me, just saying. Alright, so this week's palette, the palette that was chosen for me this week was the Lunar Beauty Greek Goddess palette. Yep, scared me again. For those of you that don't know anything about this palette, Lunar Beauty is a makeup brand that was created by Manny MUA here on the YouTubes. He is actually a favorite of mine, and I don't really care about all the, drama that goes on in the beauty community. I actually really love Manny. I have watched almost every single one of his videos, and he was one of the first persons that I chose to watch here on YouTube, and I've learned a lot from him as far as makeup goes, makeup application, and that kind of stuff. The first cut crease I ever did was following a tutorial that he gave, and I thought I did a pretty stellar job, and I didn't record it because, I wasn't doing YouTube at that time. But I love Manny, and I always knew that he was going to be coming out with a brand, and when he did, I was so ecstatic, and my light is being wonky. I was so ecstatic, and I've purchased everything from his brand, except for his new highlights that came out not that long ago. I haven't purchased any of those yet, but that doesn't mean I won't. I did purchase the Life's a Drag palette. That was the very first palette that we did in this Palette Roulette series, and I purchased the entire Greek Goddess collection. So I not only have this palette, but I have the highlight palette and the lip glosses that came out at the same time. This is a permanent fixture. The highlight palette and the lip glosses were supposed to be limited edition. I didn't go onto the websites to see if those were available or not, but I think that they are. And this palette was $48, and you can currently pick it up on lunarbeauty.com or Sephora. So that's exciting, because when I picked it up, it was just Lunar Beauty. That was the only place you could get it. But now you can pick it up at Sephora, at Sephora.com. I don't know about in-stores. I don't know what they're carrying in-store. So anyways, this is what the front of the palette looks like. It is a black background palette with a gold Oh my god, I'm hearing things. It is a black background palette with a 3D Medusa on there. I think you guys can see that she kind of stands out. And yes, I know that Medusa is not a Greek goddess, but I freaking dig it. And the palette in here, all the shades are named after goddesses, or gods, or Greek mythology gods and goddesses. And on the inside, I think goddesses. I think they're all goddesses. They are all goddesses. The highlight palette is all the highlights in there are named after monsters, and Medusa is one of the shades in that palette. So this is the front of the palette. Again, black with a 3D Medusa on there, which I think is just awesome. And the top says Lunar Beauty, and then the back says Lunar Beauty Greek Goddess palette, and it has all the info in regards to the palette. So this palette weighs 0.68 ounces or 19.2 grams, which works out to be about 0.045 grams. No, 0.45 ounces per pan in here. It is 15 shades of eyeshadow in here. It is cruelty free, it is vegan, and it has a 12-month shelf life, which I think has a lot to do with the fact that there are some pressed glitters in here. But it is the Greek Goddess color palette. He doesn't call his his eyeshadow palettes. I'm not really certain why, to be honest. It's not all pigment. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. Anyways, so you open up the palette and this is what it looks like inside. These are the shades that are inside, and it does have a very healthy sized mirror. The mirror is huge. The palette doesn't bend back on itself, so it is a little heavy if you're holding it like this trying to do your makeup, because the mirror is heavy. The mirror is a sturdy mirror and it is super heavy in and of itself. So these are the shades. Again, they're all named after goddesses. It is a 15 pan warm tone palette. It has all these everyday shades in it, except for this one little pop of blue, which is honestly, it's not my favorite shade in the palette. There are several different kinds of formulas in here, but really it breaks down to three. There are mattes and shimmers, and there's a couple pressed glitters. So your pressed glitters are going to be these two here. So you have Nemesis and Circa, which are your pressed glitters, and then you have some shimmers here, and then you have, well, or micro glitters, whichever you want to call it, these four here. This one is kind of a satin matte. It does have a little bit of a sheen to it, and then the rest are mattes. The eye look I have on today is probably my favorite eye look that I came up with out of this palette. I have to be honest, this isn't my favorite palette. I won't be getting rid of it anytime soon, but everybody needs a neutral palette in their collection, and this is my neutral tone palette. There are some pretty pops. This blue is super pretty when you get it to work on your eye, and we'll go into that a little bit differently. This mustard here is a really pretty mustard. This color is probably my favorite in the palette, in addition to this one, which I wore in my brow bone and my inner corner almost every day. I did use this color, and this color almost every day, so we're looking at, what is this called? Hestia, Cleo, and Persephone almost every day to build up the crease in my eye looks, and then went from there with the darker tones. This blue, honestly, not my favorite once you start blending it into another color. If you pat it on, it is beautiful and it works beautifully, but once you start blending it into another color, it just turns black because there is a black base to it. So it's just not the best color out there. So for me, this palette doesn't scream Greek mythology, if I'm being honest. I find it a little weird that it was a holiday collection palette, because most holiday collections are super bright and draw your attention to them and make you want to buy them, and I don't, especially around the holiday season, and I don't feel like this was the palette that did that for a lot of people. It did it for me because of Manny and because I am a Manny fan. So I purchased it, and because the packaging was beautiful, but it just wasn't, it's just not a palette that screams Greek mythology. It's missing the bright turquoise colors, the real pretty greens, the poppy reds, the like sunburst yellows. That's the color scheme that I think of. The royal purples. Those are the color schemes that I think of when I think Greek mythology, for whatever reason. You know, the royal colors, the big bright bold colors. And this isn't it. I know that when he did his video talking about this coming out, he said that he chose this color scheme because Life's a Drag was so full of color, and he just wanted to have a neutral palette in his brand. Every brand needs a neutral palette. I didn't think that this maybe needed to be the one, though. This was his holiday collection. Here comes the sun. I always choose to do my videos when the sun is going to play with us. Also, in addition to that, we all know Medusa is a monster, not a goddess. So, however, both of her parents were god and goddess. So, I think that he said that there was a reason why he used Medusa on the cover as well. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. So, I'm gonna pop some pictures in here while I talk to you guys about the palette. I used this palette both with and without, as always, eye primer. I felt like it worked better with eye primer than it did without eye primer. Without eye primer, my eye look kind of depleted rather quickly. I will tell you that I hate the metallic shades in this palette. The biggest reason why is because whether I was wetting my brush or not, I always wet my brush, but for purposes of my videos like this, I do tend to do an eye look without wetting my brush as well. So whether I was wetting my brush or not, I had a fair amount of fallout. I do have a picture I'll put in here of a blue eye look I was trying to do, and the fallout around my eye was absolutely insane. But in addition to the fallout that was falling on my face, it also would find its way into my eyes. And I don't know how it was finding its way into my eyes. I've honestly never had a shadow that I've had to work with that had fallout that would gather into my eyeball. And it stung. It stung so bad every single time I would put it. I was doing nothing differently, but I'd pat it onto my eye and I'd find it falling out on my face. I could feel it falling out on my face. And then all of a sudden I could feel it go into my eyeball, and my eyeball would just sting and water and destroy my makeup. So I'd have to start all over. It was a pain in the ass. I am not a fan of the shimmers. The shimmers that didn't really do that, I take that back. I'm not a fan of the metallics or the pressed glitters, because those are the ones that did that to me. The shimmers weren't bad. This shimmer right here, not a bad shimmer. That shimmer I used almost every day. I'm using it today in my brow bone in my inner corner. I find that it is a wonderful shimmer and it works really well, and it is beautiful. It also works really well as a highlight, but there is also a highlight in the highlight palette for this that is fairly right alongside that color and looks just like it. So I paired that palette with this palette the whole time. This palette, this was the first week I had used this palette, and I'm not disappointed in it. The colors, the mattes blended beautifully. The shimmers were beautiful. The pressed glitters I could have done without. My dog keeps freaking me out. I'm in my house by myself right now, and never mind. I feel like it did better with a creamier textured eye primer than it did with a tacky eye primer, but that could have just been the tacky eye primer I was using. So I only had 2 eye primers with me over the week. I had my MAC paint pot in soft ochre, and I had my Urban Decay primer potion. So the primer potion, it worked better with the primer potion than it did with the soft ochre paint pot. So, and I feel like the soft ochre is a lot more tacky than the primer potion is. So with that being said, I do love me some Manny, and I do love the Greek Goddess palette. I'm not a fan of the black, honestly. Look at how dirty it is. You guys see that? And prior to picking it up this week, I had never used it. So that's all 1 week's use. It is so filthy. It is so disgusting. I will forever keep this in my collection no matter what. It is going on 6 months of this 12-month shelf life, and I just picked it up. But powders are a little bit different. Maybe the pressed glitters were acting the way they were because they're going bad. I don't know. But it doesn't smell. The palette doesn't smell at all. I think it's going to be good to go for quite some time. I love this palette. I love the packaging of this palette. I do love how blendable and soft all of these shadows were. I just don't like the pressed glitters. I think this palette could have done without the pressed glitters. So I'll do some swatches for you since I didn't get that done yet, and then we will pick my next palette. So before I get into swatches, I do want to tell you that regardless of the formula in this palette, as far as the differences, you know, the pressed glitters or whatnot, they are all super, super soft. All of them are super, super creamy and buttery. They blend beautifully. The only one I really, really don't like is Nemesis, which is the blue one. I really don't like it because once you start blending it, it just looks more like a black. The blue kind of disappeared and you have to pat it onto your eye, which I'm not above. I just wish it would blend a little bit better as well. So let's start with these shades here. I'm going to hold this palette up so I can read you the names. The first one here is Hestia. It's Hestia. It is a super creamy, cream colored shadow with a little bit of a pink undertone. This is Harmonia. This is a nice like mustard yellow color. This one here is Celine. It is kind of a burnt orange like shimmer. The next one is Aphrodite, a really pretty like burnt red color, really one of my favorites. It is in my eye look today. The next one here is Hera. It is a really pretty like coppery gold color, not a real bright gold though like what's on the exterior of the palette. The next one, and it is a shimmer. And the next one here is Circe. It's C-I-R-C-E. I think it is probably a pressed glitter. It is a really, really pretty rose-toned color. It is really pretty to use on the eyes as well. Then there is this shade here, which is Cleo. It is just a flesh-toned color. I used it a lot in my crease, or as a transition. Then there is Iris, which is a really pretty like rosy champagne color, and it is a shimmer. Next is Nemesis. This is my least favorite color in the palette. This is that blue, but as you guys can see, as I blended it, it turned into more of a black. You cannot even see that the blue is there. You can see the blue on my finger, but you can't see the blue in your eye look once you start blending it. The next shade is this one, which is Ray. It is R-H-E-A, and Rhea, maybe. It is a really pretty, like, orange color. It's appearing a little more red on camera, though. Then is Artemis, which is a orange, kind of like a pumpkin orange, but not like an internal pumpkin, the internal of a pumpkin, but the external of a pumpkin. Then we have Athena, which is a really pretty white-based shimmer. Then we have Persephone, which is just a taupey color with a little bit, I think it's a little bit of a pink undertone to that brown. And then we have Calliope, which I think is supposed to be kind of a black brown. And then we have Calypso, which is the satin of the bunch. It is a really pretty like deep brown satin color. I really do like the palette. There's just, you know, some shades that function better than others, and you're gonna find that in any palette that you have. I have to tell you, I'm more of a color girl, so it not being my favorite palette is more than likely because it's just not color. There's just not a lot of color to it. I have found my looks to be super boring, to be honest, this last week. And like I said, everybody needs a neutral palette, and this one happens to be mine. Because all of the shades in here are super buttery and creamy, it is also super powdery. If you look at the palette itself, the exterior cardboard part of the packaging, it is also filthy, and it's filthy because when you put your fingers in there, it is just full of powder. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's just full of powder. They're super powdery. They're super powdery. But that doesn't make them horrible. I don't mind a powdery eyeshadow if the pigmentation is there, and the pigmentation is definitely there on these shadows. And look, it's even more filthy since I started filming. I don't know which I like less, a white palette or a black palette. Both of them show fingerprints. Both of them show dirt like no other. Alright, so now we're going to pick my new palette for next week. This is after I took off all the shadow on my arms. That's disgusting. So now we're going to pick a different palette for next week. So for those of you who do not know, I have a Samsung Note 9 and I pick my palettes with an app that I got out of the Play Store through the Android system, and it is called Decide Now. The inspiration for these videos came from a lady named Danny. Her channel name is P.A.W, and she does a palette a week series which she uses as a declutter series. She also uses a Wheel of Fortune type app like the Decide Now app is, only she got it from the App Store that is for iPhones. So, but they look very similar. They're just different colors. So when you pick this app, you choose a wheel that you want to use, and then you name that wheel. Mine is called Palette a Week, inspired by P.A.W. And then you put all the things that you want it to decide for you into this app. I did have several other pieces in here, but as we have done Palette Roulette, I have taken palettes out, and as I get new palettes, I also put those palettes in. I do have quite a few that I need to put in here still from my GMC haul, which I can link up here. I haven't put those palettes in yet. So we're going to spin the wheel, and it's going to choose our next palette. And it has BH Cosmetics, It's My Ray Ray. I'm going to go get that palette real quick. I think this system likes to screw with me just a little bit because it chooses super colorful palettes back to back, super purple palettes back to back. And it also chooses super neutral palettes back to back. This one, the It's My Ray Ray palette by BH Cosmetics, was a collaboration with another YouTuber. And this is the palette. I do like this palette, so I'm kind of excited to start using it again. But be sure to tune in next week to hear what I have to say about the It's My Ray Ray palette. Hopefully you liked this video enough that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. Hopefully you also liked me or this video or my other videos enough that you're considering also subscribing to my channel. I would love to see you guys down in the comments section, and I hope to see you guys next week. What palette are you using this week? Let me know. I would be ever so grateful to know that you have videos like this out there and I could come and watch it. And thank you again so much for watching, you guys. Until next time, bye.